All right, everyone, hello and welcome to another educational video presented by Wholeo Awakening and Thunder Dragon Neigong. Josh here with you again today to talk about the value of science in herbalism, how to approach scientific studies on herbs. Now, of course, scientific studies are considered the gold standard for any research in the modern world, and herbs are no exception to that. The consensus is that if there are no studies touting and proving the benefits of herbs, then we can't trust whether they will work or not, or whether they are even safe. So we're going to be addressing that. We're going to be addressing what these scientific studies are, their value, and their place in actually studying herbs, and how herbs have been traditionally understood, how they work, and how they differ from the modern biomedical paradigm. Before we get into it, though, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the applicable action is based on where you're watching this, to be notified for other videos and trainings that we do here on these channels. So this whole thing came about recently as I was thinking about watching a seminar, a training from one of the major supplement companies where the speaker was talking about, I believe it was ginseng. I don't remember the exact plant that they were talking about, ginseng or rhodiola, but they were talking about, they were taking some questions and talking about how some people had adverse reactions to the plant, and they were rather surprised, despite being well-educated researchers, well-educated scientists. They were surprised at hearing about the adverse reaction that the people had. Using rhodiola as an example, a lot of people I have heard tend to get headaches from rhodiola. While it's touted as one of these great adaptogens that everyone should be taking, that it's great for energy and focus. And, well, a lot of people, in my experience, quite a few people, get headaches from it. And these researchers were rather confused by it. Same thing with ginseng, another big energy adaptogen that is very popular these days. Even though in traditional Chinese medicine, ginseng would not be given to anyone who was less than a senior citizen. It's considered an old person's remedy to address kidney deficiency. But in the West, in these modern times, it's recommended for everyone. If you feel a little tired, take some ginseng. Same thing with rhodiola. In rhodiola, yes, it can help with focus. That is a traditional use for it, but it's very astringent. It astringes, which means to tonify, to tighten up. Say you have a leaky tissue, a tissue that is producing excessive fluids or mucus. Rhodiola can help to tighten that up and dry that up. But it also does that not only on the physical, but on the psychological, the mental levels. And it will actually astringe the thoughts, which is how it focuses an individual. And for people who are already tense in the mind, it will make that worse and give headaches. But these researchers were totally oblivious to this, apparently, and were rather surprised by these reactions that the people who were asking these questions were having. And so we're going to get into exactly what this means and why this is a problem when, especially, we're dealing with modern researchers and herbs. Even when they work for these supplement companies, they're supposedly involved in herbal practice. They still miss a lot of these very important principles from herbalism. So first we want to put science in perspective. Science these days is placed on a pedestal that really misunderstands what it is and over-glorifies, overuses this great system, this great tool that we have that we call science. Science is the system of testing observable phenomena in the natural physical world. Science is designed as a system of understanding how the physical world works, how it interacts, how different physical objects interact with other physical objects, and likewise with physical energies. By designing experiments based on our observations and repeating them in various ways, we can learn what to anticipate from the function of the natural world. Essentially, we observe the world. This observation leads to ideas that we might have about how things might work, and then we design studies to put these things to the test to see, okay, if we do this, if what's going to be the reaction, what's going to be the interaction of these molecules or these objects or these energy frequencies. And in this way, science is an invaluable tool for gaining information about our world. Don't misunderstand. I am not opposed to science at all. I'm a chemistry geek myself. I love all this stuff. But we have to know its place, and we have to understand what its purpose is. And we have to understand that it's not the only tool in our belt, as our modern academic world tries to limit us to. Like any tool, it has its place and it has its purpose. We must be cautious not to over-apply any one tool beyond its scope. So just as you would not try to use a hammer to turn a screw, you could use that hammer to nail the screw in, but that's not going to give you the best results with that particular object. You want a screwdriver to turn the screw, and you wouldn't use the butt of a screwdriver to try to hit a nail in. It's not going to work as well as using the hammer. You have different tools for different situations, different purposes. And this is how we best reach our most accurate conclusions. Science is often seen as the only legitimate way to attain knowledge, when in fact it is definitionally a system designed to test and measure observable physical phenomena. That is literally what the definition of science is. To say that science is everything is pure ignorance. Science is one tool for one category of knowledge, among others such as mathematics, logic, and philosophy, which are designed to study other areas of reality. You see, really this almost deification of science stems from the materialist worldview that has sprung up in recent centuries, where it is viewed that the material world, the physical world, is all there is all there's ever been, and somehow, even though they can't tell us how, it perpetuated itself out of nothing and arrived here, where we know logically, mathematically, this is a logical mathematical universe, and that these are the tools that we use to study these metaphysical abstractions that actually provide the foundation for physical reality and are the generators of physical reality. So when we focus just on science and just on the physical world, we are missing out on an entire half of reality, the metaphysical reality. To trust science alone is to ignore the existence of any non-material existence, which leads to serious existential and ontological issues that have not and cannot be resolved through materialism alone. So we want to understand that science is a wonderful tool, great for understanding physical phenomena, not great, not designed for understanding metaphysical phenomena. So when it comes to scientific studies, design is crucial. A scientific study is only as good as its design. A flawed design leads to flawed results. The researcher must know enough about the subject to be able to design the study appropriately. If the researcher doesn't know what they're doing, then the odds that they're going to design a test accurately to test whatever the subject is very low. Trust the science, as we've been hearing over the past few years particularly, is fine and true advice. Absolutely, we should trust the science. Science is great when accurately applied to its accurate subject. What is the problem here is the researchers. There are researchers, and the study design are what we must examine more carefully. Trust the science, yes. Do not always trust the researcher. Do not always trust the design of the study. Do not always trust the interpretation of the results, because these can be very easily skewed. Scientific data can be skewed in virtually any direction based purely on the bias of the researcher and the design of the study. In fact, Stanford professor John Ioannidis notes that most of them, speaking of scientific studies, most of them are not carefully done and or are done with predetermined agendas. So people go into the study hoping to get particular results, and so they will skew the data to get those results. This is why it's very important to always look at the design of the study, look at who was funding the study, who's paying for it, because obviously if someone has a vested interest in the results, that's going to be a potential red flag. Who's doing the study? Who designed it? What's their background? What's their knowledge? What's their skill set? Do they have the expertise to be able to be even studying this topic? And further, he notes that the large majority of produced systematic reviews and meta-analyses are unnecessary, misleading, and conflicted. This is very important because these scientific studies and then the meta-analyses of these studies, which is considered the gold standard of any scientific research, the professor Ioannidis finds that these are flawed to a phenomenally large degree. In his reports beginning around 2005 and the research that he's done since, his findings reveal that as many as 50% of scientific studies are flawed by design, and only 3% of meta-analyses are reliable. Think about that. That means 97% of meta-analyses are unreliable for one reason or another. And this is not just in the study of pharmaceuticals and herbs. We're talking about across the board. This is also a huge problem, because I'm also involved in physical training, fitness training, and martial arts training. This is a huge problem in physical fitness and corrective exercise world, where meta-analyses are essentially useless because of the flawed designs of their studies. So we find this problem permeating every part of science. Flawed designs lead to flawed studies, lead to flawed results. And then that's not even talking about the interpretations of these results, which can be skewed any which way based on the biases of those who are putting them forth. So we have to understand the current medical paradigm to see how this applies to herbs. Currently accepted studies are based on the modern biomedical model. Even if the subject is an herb, it is studied by the same criteria as a drug. So they treat them the same. The goal in these studies is to isolate which molecules in a remedy, in a plant, are acting on which receptors in the cells of the body. So their goal in this reductionist view, reductionism is the idea that we're taking apart a whole and we're narrowing in on a particular part, a particular piece of that whole, which is what drug therapy focuses on. We take one molecule, which is called the active compound, and we find out which receptor on which cell in the body that molecule interfaces with, and what results come from that. Pharmaceutical drugs are designed on this model. The cell is the target, and the goal is to alter its function in some desirable way. The whole herb, the when we're studying an herb this way, the whole herb is often reduced to what are considered the active molecules based on this model of receptor targeting. You'll see this in common examples of turmeric, it's curcumin or turmerone. In milk thistle, it's silymarin. In something like ashwagandha, it's the bethanolides in ashwagandha. It's the berberine from Oregon crepe or golden seal. So they're not looking at the whole plant, they're looking at this one particular compound or family of compounds found in the plant. So modern science seeks to place everything into a single box, and this leads to category errors, which invalidate the results of many research projects. A category error is a logical fallacy where it's best represented in the classic apples to oranges problem. Say, well, what's better, the apple or the orange? Well, they're two different things. You can't say which one is better. They're two different categories. And so a category error here is you're taking a drug, in the way that you would study a drug, and you're using that same method to study an herb, and they're two different things. So you can't use the same method of study to study these two different things and expect to get good results. Most researchers are trained only in the modern biomedical paradigm and do not have the knowledge to accurately handle herbs, even if, giving them the benefit of the doubt, they are open to herbs and they are interested in herbs and they actually want to find out how to use them, as many in the supplement industry do. The people I was talking about at the start of this video who work for the supplement industry trying to promote herbs and herbal medicine, they're trained in this modern biomedical paradigm and they don't have the knowledge to accurately handle herbs. They're not traditional herbalists. So let's look at traditional herbalism and how it compares. It is based on vitalism. Whole herbs are more than just the active molecules. They are a synergistic collection of myriad compounds. Any given plant has hundreds or thousands of different compounds in it, all interacting together in specific ways. And these compounds behave differently together than they do in isolation. So you can have a compound by itself, isolated, and it will behave in one certain way. When you take that compound and put it together with its cohorts in a whole plant, it will actually alter its behavior based on which other compounds it's interacting with. And this interaction of hundreds or thousands of different compounds in a plant is what makes this type of study, this type of reductionist study on plants, really an impossible endeavor. To this day, not a single plant has been completely studied through and through because it is not possible to calculate for all of the different interactions between all of these different compounds and how they're going to work when in the presence of each other versus in isolation. It's just not possible. It's too complex. And so it's really a pointless venture to try to purely look at herbs through a modern biomedical lens. Now, it's not to say that it's not valuable. It's good to learn about these things, to research, but to make that the basis of your practice is not going to yield good results. Vitalism uses the whole plant for the whole person, not one molecule for one receptor. In traditional herbalism, we're really not concerned about what chemical in the plant is going to interact with what cell in your body. Now that's happening. The chemical aspect is happening, but that's not what we focus on, because if we focus just on that, we're going to ignore so many other things. And mind you, this is also where side effects come from in drugs. When you focus in on one molecule for one cell and you fit those together, you're ignoring the cascade reaction that's going to go down the line and how that cell is going to interact with other cells in your body, how this molecule is going to interact with other molecules. And this is where you get the chain reactions that lead to the side effects that happen from drugs. You get the main studied reaction, yes, but you also create a cascade of other reactions that come off of that. Because you altered one thing, you inevitably alter all these other things as well. And that's where the problems come in. So in vitalism, we don't look at that. We look at the whole plant holistically for the whole person. Herbs work not merely on cell receptors, but they work by altering the quality of the fluids, tissues, and electrical fields that connect and govern the whole organism. In true herbal practice, we're not looking at chemical reactions. We're looking at adjusting the quality of the fluids, the tissues, and even the electrical fields, the energetic qualities of the body, so that we can support the body in regulating itself. Vitalism recognizes the whole plant and the whole person, body, soul, and spirit, rather than merely focusing on measurable chemical reactions. This approach provides a more holistic and complete system which can be applied to many more subtle and nuanced situations. So, for example, we would take, with a drug, you say, well, this drug works for this disease. And by that same token, many in the supplement world say, well, this herb is good for X condition. And that is just not the case. Herbs have a variety. Any one herb has dozens and dozens of different applications based on the way that it alters the quality of these energetics in the body. So by working with the extracellular matrix and the ground regulatory system, the body is encouraged to adapt and regulate itself. Now, what are these? Vitalism targets the extracellular matrix and the ground regulatory system, which are the matrices that govern and sustain the cells. The cells, the modern understanding of medical understanding is based on cell theory, that the cell is the prime unit of the body. The cell is what governs everything in the body. And this is not accurate. We're finding now, they're just now coming around to finding out what traditional herbalists have always known, that it's just as the fascia in the musculoskeletal system, the fascial sheaths are what connect the body and create a unified tensegrity unit where you can alter one part up here and it will reflect down into other parts of the body through the fascial network. By this same principle, the extracellular matrix, which is the inner ocean, as Matthew Wood puts it, this inner, the fluids that connect all parts of the body together, by altering the qualities, the electrical signals and patterns that go through this system, it affects the ground regulatory system, which is what governs the cells. The cells do not act on their own. They act in accordance to the quality of this inner ocean, this inner fluid that connects every cell in the body, every tissue in the body. And this is what herbs work on. We're not targeting specific cells. We're targeting the quality of this inner fluid, the quality of this regulatory system by which the body governs and maintains balance in itself. By adjusting the quality of these fluids, tissues, and energetics, we then alter the function of the cells. So working with the ECM and the GRS directly, the body is encouraged to adapt and regulate itself. Drug therapies, which target the cells directly, bypass the extracellular matrix, and they are effective for speedy results. You hit the cell directly, you're going to get quick results, but it can damage the body with repeated or prolonged use. The more you bypass the regulatory system and hit the cell directly, with long-term, prolonged, repeated use, that's going to cause problems and wear out and deteriorate the body. So we want to focus on supporting the body's ability to regulate and heal itself. So let's look at category errors Randomized studies are not designed for testing herbs because they are based on the wrong functional model. Modern medicine focuses on a one-size-fits-all remedies. They're going to find one drug that works the same for every person who takes it. Herbalism is highly specific and individualized. No one-size-fits-all in herbalism. The focus is not on age, gender, race, or diagnosed medical condition, but rather on individual constitution. Randomized studies, which are again, one of the gold standards for modern scientific research, fail to account for the proper criteria that we would want to look for in studying an herb. They separate people by age, by gender, by race, by medical condition. But even within those groups, you're going to have people who are naturally warmer or cooler, people who are bigger or smaller, people who are more tense or more relaxed, people who tend to be damper or drier. And these are the qualities: temperature, moisture, tone. These are the qualities that herbs work on and that they adjust in the body systems. And of course, if you've got a group of people of any size, you're going to have an array of different shapes and sizes and qualities amongst these people, even in the same age group, same gender group, same even diagnosed condition group. And this is why you get hit or miss results in scientific studies on herbs, because they're not categorized correctly. They're giving the herb to all these different people who are different shapes and sizes and qualities, different dispositions, different constitutions, and that one herb is not good for a condition. It is appropriate for a particular quality of constitution. And so this is how these studies are flawed and how they are misapplied and why they yield unreliable results when studying herbs. A study containing a random collection of people will naturally provide mixed results due to the variety of individual qualities and constitutions. Studies are controlled for the wrong criteria, and this is why they yield mixed results. Herbs do not work the same for every person. They act on individual qualities which differ even among otherwise similar populations. Here again, researchers are simply not equipped to accurately design studies on herbs. So herbalism combines physical science and spiritual intuition. Practicing herbalism from a purely chemical perspective will yield less than optimal results. You can get the job done a lot of times, but it's not going to be your best work. To be truly successful requires a break from the modern materialist way of thinking. Physics and metaphysics combine to form the unified whole of reality. They are two parts of the same. The physical comes from the metaphysical and returns to it. This requires more than just knowledge and information, as our modern science focuses on, but a cultivation of wisdom and intuition, what to do with that knowledge. Material science is but one aspect of reality. To acknowledge the physical while ignoring the metaphysical is to be blind to half of reality. While the disciplines of math, logic, and physics readily understand this very often, the medical field has largely yet to catch up. Many scientists, many researchers in these other fields understand this and are coming to accept it. But the medical field is still rooted in its outdated way of thinking. So this has been our little presentation on scientific research for herbs. Again, it's very valuable. It should be done, absolutely. But we need to be skeptical of these studies that come about because we need to understand how they're done, what the criteria are, and how these results are being interpreted. Because very often, most of the time, in fact, they're done by people who just don't know about herbs. They're not herbalists. They're not trained in the traditional ways. And so they're studying something from a perspective that creates a category error. And this is why the results are flawed. Thanks for joining us in this video. As always, for more educational trainings, be sure to like and follow us here, as I said, and be sure to check out our website for more in-depth studies with our classes, courses, and consultations that we have there, wholeoawakening.com. All right. With that said, everybody take care. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.